Howdy folks, Little John, and time for another version of 5 on Friday. Been a little while since I've actually done a straight up 5 on Friday, so here we go. As always, a little bit of help, and the help today is coming from Little John's own Southern Comfort Before we get into today's discussion, I'd like to raise a glass to a good mate of mine over there in the Margaret River, old brew buddy. Had his first son on Wednesday evening. Apparently delivered it himself. So keep you right. Congratulations, mate. Holly, all the best. Hey, enjoy it. Kids are great. And if they're not, you can brew beer and deal with it. Anyway, so today's topic is one for the all-grain brewers. If you're a kit brewer, this is going to be really pretty much irrelevant for you. But if you are a kit brewer thinking of getting into all grain, then it may have some relevance and may be of benefit to you at some point in your travel, in your journey. And what I want to talk about is efficiency within your brewing, within the making of your wort, incorporating into that some topics that you'll hear thrown around. One particularly is potential gravity, or just potential, and dead space. So just a little background on what it is. When you get into all grain brewing and you start playing around with grain and mashing and various different amounts of equipment, you'll see thrown around more often than not the terminology of efficiency, and it's a property. It's expressed as a number, as a percentage, and effectively what efficiency is, it's a percentage of the available sugars in the grain that you start with that you actually manage to get into the wort that you're fermenting. There is very long-winded and detailed explanations scientifically and mathematically on how those numbers are attained, and the reality is you don't need to know the great detail, but it's not a bad thing to understand what that number represents and how that affects you with your brewing, and particularly how it affects you with getting to the point of hitting your numbers regularly. That being your target gravities, your original gravity of your brew, and your target volume, and the amount of actual wort that you get into your fermenter. So to get your efficiency, you start off. Your starting point is your potential of the grain that you're using. And as it's referred to sometimes just as potential, you will see sometimes referred to as potential gravity. And if you look at, like when you're looking at grain, the specifications, it will have in the grain specs its potential, and it's not often, more often than it's expressed as a gravity number. So it might be expressed as 1.038. 1.036, 1.040, and that will happen with grain, and also to dry malt and liquid malt will quite often be expressed in the same way, particularly in recipe software when you're calculating a recipe. That's how you will see it set out. So what that potential means, and I said this is where the mathematical equations come in. It is the amount of gravity or sugars that you can extract from that grain, given a certain amount of grain, a certain amount of liquid, and with a certain outcome. Now, I said again, you don't need to know all their numbers because your software will work it out for you. But it's how you calculate backwards or down to your efficiencies for measuring your outcome. Okay, so what your efficiency number is, it is a percentage of that potential gravity that you achieve from the grain. So just in a very rough way, if you were using 1 kilo of grain and it had a potential of 1.038, then if you were to make a litre of wort with that grain, its gravity would be 1.038. That's 100%. That's 100% efficiency. Okay. If you were to extract a lower number, then it becomes a percentage of that, and that's how it works out. And again, I said, if you want to go and look at the numbers and the science, go and do it. I'm not going to sit here and go through it. It's too much. I said, you don't need to know it. Right. But the efficiency numbers are a good thing to know how they work and how you come to get them and how you work with those numbers within your system. Okay, so when you're creating a recipe, one of the first numbers that you're looking at is your generally is brewhouse efficiency. You'll often see also in some software you'll see mash efficiency, mash house efficiency, and some brewers get caught on this mash efficiency, and you see people using these numbers when they're talking about their brew. From a home brew perspective, given the systems that we use and being so small, mash efficiency is pretty much freaking useless. It's used by the big breweries when they're making large quantities of beer, and it tells them how much they're going to extract from that grain in the actual mash itself. Now this will become a little bit more clearer why that difference becomes more important when you go to brew house. When you bring on a commercial scale, the volumes are much bigger, so your losses and your wastage is a much smaller amount, or percentage-wise, of the whole batch. So therefore, the output you get into your fermenter is much higher than what you're going to get on a home brew scale. And again, when I start talking losses, you'll understand that a little bit clearer. So when you have a finite system and you know exactly what it is, then mash efficiency can give you a target of where you're going to finish up at, and it can be worked with. I believe realistically from the home brew scale for the average home brewer is not worth worrying about what your mash efficiency actually is. Okay, and a lot of recipes, your mash efficiency will be reported to you realistically as your pre-boil volume. That is where your mash efficiency will come out, how much you got right there, and we don't need to know about it. Okay, mash efficiency is a reasonably static thing from brewer to brewer because it comes down, it's just grain and water. You put a certain amount of grain into a certain amount of water at a certain temperature for a certain amount of time. Every brewer is going to come out with pretty much the same gravity, with a slight variation for the actual crack of the grain itself. But generally speaking, you're going to come within a fairly narrow band. Once you jump into putting that mash then into somebody's boiler and getting it from the mash tun, then you start getting playing around. But anyway, so at home, trying to work out what your efficiency is, you need to allow for a certain amount of things in your software. And this is again where good note taking comes in. And I've discussed this before in a previous video about keeping records. And records, as I said, it's not just about keeping a record of your brew, it's being able to understand your system and using the right numbers within your software to get consistent results and hit the same things over and over. So you're running with your things, your mash volume, your mash in volume, your sparge volume, you know, your pre-boil volume. But one of the biggest numbers, one of the biggest effects on your actual efficiency is the design of your mashing equipment, your mash tun, you know, and exactly how you're using it, whether you're using a mash tun or you brew on a bag, you know. They will have differences. Just as an example from my 3V system, you know, which runs a 40 litre chest cooler as my mash tun. I have somewhere in the vicinity of it's almost 6 litres of dead space. Now dead space, and this is a word you're going to see a lot because dead space is your important one. Dead space is the amount of liquid or wort that you are unable to remove from your mash tun. So there's that stuff that stays below the tap that you can't get out. Stuff you toss away. Okay. Now, as I said, in my esky tun, it's somewhere around 6 litres. It's quite high. The tap sits reasonably high, and with the false bottom I use, I don't get a hell of a lot better than that. I allow for 6, and it works pretty well. That number will vary depending on what kind of mash tun you're using. If you're using just a standard kettle with a domed false bottom, you'll probably get far less left. You might have a litre or 2 litres left behind. So that becomes your dead space. So the lower that dead space is, the higher your efficiency is going to be. Okay. So essentially, if you're starting off with 40 litres of water in that tun, and you can only take 34 litres off, then you've got a far lower number than if you're taking off 38 because you've only got a 2 litre dead space. That's where your percentages changes. So that brew house efficiency takes into account that loss. Now 40 litres in my mash tun is a little bit high. It's probably closer to 32 litres of actual liquid, but anyway. But that's where it is, that's where that loss is. So you need to know what that dead space is. And it's no good estimating it because it's not going to work. You can measure it, physically measure it, but that also won't give you necessarily an accurate number depending on your setup, because there's grain involved. As I said, I've got 6 litres of dead space, but there will be grain in that dead space as well, and the dead space takes up a whack, and the grain takes up a whack of that space itself. So just measuring in, just pouring water in and going, okay, there's 6 litres I can't get out, doesn't work. Because with the actual grain, there's not 6 litres of liquid sitting there. There's a bit less. It's closer to 4 litres. So this is where keeping your numbers matters, because you got to know what went into your mash tun to start with, and what comes out and goes into your kettle, and that difference is your dead space. Okay, there's different ways you can add it. Sometimes it'll just be mash dead space. Sometimes it's just a straight up dead space. Some software will list you as sparge dead space. And it's all the same. It's the same thing. It's liquid what you lose to the process, to your equipment. Okay. So do your mash. You have a measurement. You transfer to your kettle, to your pre-boil, and you measure again. And that difference is your dead space. Then you need from there, so that gets you effectively at that point, that's your mash efficiency. You then boil, and depending on your equipment, how much you boil and what you lose in your kettle, you'll then have a little, that's what you have then, is what the stuff that gets left in your actual kettle is what will be referred to as kettle losses. It's the same thing, it's the dead space in your kettle that you leave behind. Now, again, that's going to vary on system. If you're using, say, the Robo Brew or the Brewzilla, and you're pumping out of that, you've got virtually no losses because you pump everything out. You know, you're lucky if you've got, you know, half a litre that you can't get out. So your kettle loss is very, very small. If you go out the tap, then you do leave, you know, 1.5 litres to 2 litres behind. My 3V system, if I'm boiling on my kettle, I lose about another 2.5 litres to the kettle. Because that's just what I can't get any more than that. I can't get any more than that out. So it's a bigger loss. So what you get in that situation, my 3V system has significantly large dead spaces and kettle loss. Okay, so much so that an average brew on my 3V system runs in the vicinity of 55% efficiency. It's very, very low. But that's not a problem because I know what it is and I adjust my recipes for that. What it means is on a standard 23 litre batch I need to use about 600 grams extra grain to get the same gravity as I would if I had a 70% efficiency, which is about what I get with the Robo Brew. I get about 68-70% on an average sort of standard strength sort of beer. Obviously you go to a bigger beer it gets different, but and your systems, all your systems in between, depending on what you're using, is going to make a difference. If I was to mash in my mash tun and then transfer to the Robo Brew and boil in that, my efficiency is going to come up to somewhere around 60%, 61, maybe 62, because I haven't got that loss in the Robo Brew that I'm allowed for in my 3V system. But I'm still losing, yeah, that 4 litres to the actual mash tun. So those variations all need to be accounted for. You need to be aware of that. You know, you can't just look at someone's recipe and they go, it's 70% efficiency and just bung that out, because you're not necessarily going to get that. And until you work out what your efficiency is, you're never going to be able to replicate recipes consistently and with accuracy. You're going to be all over the shop. You're going to be over volume, under volume, over gravity, under gravity. You know, till you can work out exactly where each number needs to be as you go. Your mash volume, your sparge volume, how much pre-boil you got, how much post-boil, what that efficiency number is in the middle. You're just running around with your head in the air, not really sure what you're doing. So you've got to take your numbers. Take all their numbers down. Compare those numbers to what your recipe said. I always suggest to people when you're first doing an all-grain recipe to aim for about 63% efficiency. Start at 63%, no matter what your system is. 63 I find is a good number, because if you do get good efficiency and you push up to 70, 72, you're not going massively over. If you do have a system with a lot of losses, and you are knocking out 53 or 55% efficiency, again, you're not a huge way off. But if you're working at 70% and you knock out a 53% efficiency, you're off the mark. You're so far off, it's not funny. You know, and it's frustrating, and it's really, this is ridiculous, this is not worth the bother. And you can lose your way with it. So I said, start at 63%. And any recipe you get will come in, you should be able to get it in percentages of the actual, as opposed to weights. If you do get weights on a recipe, make sure you get the efficiency number that recipe's worked off and put that into your software. And then you can dial that, then you can adjust it with your efficiency, drop it back to that 63% mark and get the numbers that you need to use to recreate. You know, a recipe that uses 5 kilos of grain at 70%, it's going to need, you know, maybe 5.4 kilos at 63%. So knowing those numbers means you can adjust those things. But if you start with that 63% brew, take your measurements, and then you can compare, because your brew should tell you, okay, you should have had, you know, 27 litres at 1038 pre-boil. If you've got 26 litres at, you know, say 1040, you're pretty close. You're a little bit over on the gravity, a bit under the volume. It's just a case of working out where you need to pour in that extra litre, and that would pretty much balance you out. If you've got the right volume, you've got your 27 litres, but you're at 1034 instead of 1038, then your efficiency's set too high. You need to cut it back, and that'll bring your grain up. Okay, which then means you'll need to do a little tweak on volumes on the next batch. But if you tweak that one, tweak the obvious thing each time, and over a few brews, and it won't. And it's not necessarily. You might get lucky. It might happen in 1 or 2 brews. I think on the Robo brew, it took me, I think it was the 7th brew I did before I actually hit my target numbers all round. You know, pre-boil, post-boil, and actual gravity. You know, I was all around it. I was getting, you know, it takes a while to dial it all in. But once you do, you're set. So it's worth the effort to get there in the first place. And the reality is, and again, I said we're going that lower efficiency, is that with a lower efficiency, the worst thing you're going to do is you're going to have a beer that's higher gravity than what you're intending. And that's just a simple case of putting some more water in. Topping it up with a bit of water, bring it to the gravity you want. You know? So you had 26 litres instead of 23 litres at your set gravity. If you can't fit 26 litres in, just put 23 litres in, throw over 3 out. You know, doesn't matter. But you hit your numbers, and then you can adjust the next time. You'll get it right. You won't have to throw 3 litres out. You won't need to top it up because you'll get the right number. So they're the numbers you need to get your head around. And I said you don't need to know them inside out. You don't need to know exactly what they mean. But you need to know how to keep a record of it, and how to make the adjustments within your recipes in your software, so you can start being consistent. As always, if you've got any questions, stick them down the bottom. And I'm sure there's probably going to be plenty of questions on this one. Go ahead, ask away, we'll answer them. If you haven't subscribed to Little John, hit the button down there in the corner. Get a notification when the videos are up. This is what we do. Talking about all the little things you need to do to make better beer. Make the best beer that you can make. But on that note, with a nice sweet caramelly goodness, I bid you farewell. So, till I see you again, we're brewing beer, we're drinking beer, or we're talking beer. Good brewing.